Okay, here we go. Now we're green. Green is for go. City Council discussion, item number one, the Commercial Retention and Redevelopment CRR Program, formerly known as the Facade Program. And we'll have Ms. Aisha Driggers, our Director of Office of Business Opportunities.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. It's great to see y'all this morning. I also have our staff here, Brett Whiting and Carla Eichelberger. Those are the staff members responsible for our commercial retention and redevelopment program. That was formerly the Facade Program. Most people are familiar with it, with that title. So I just want to provide you with some updates. We didn't have funding last fiscal year, but we do this year. So we're excited to get kicked off with that program. All right, so here's an overview of the program. We offer $15,000 for exterior improvements and $10,000 for the interior improvements. And then we also have an additional incentive for vacant or abandoned buildings for $10,000. The property must be vacant for 12 consecutive months prior to those improvements. And that's just an incentive to kind of fill vacant spaces. That was started a couple years ago in the Five Points area.
Has it been used?
It has been, yes. So eligible businesses, you can be a property owner or a tenant of the business to participate in the forgivable loan. And the tenants have to get approval from the property owners in order to apply for that. I did want to point out the ineligible businesses listed here, the residential use, of course, government, public educational facilities, franchises, hotels, liquor stores, convenience stores, private education chain stores, businesses with 51% or more of revenue from alcohol sales, and adult-oriented businesses are ineligible for participating.
So this is the question that I had, because we do have businesses that are restaurants, but then also serve alcohol and Five Points. And I know we had a conversation via email about how there's no federal restriction or program restriction, and that is maybe a OBO or OBO law rule?
City.
Oh, it's a Tina Herbert rule.
Yeah, that was.
So-
that
I like
was-
it.
That was started during because we had a lot of 5 Point bars that had issues that arose out of alcohol incidents.
Can we just say bar versus restaurant?
Yeah, because there are some restaurants
no.
that I think should qualify, but
Well, and that's how we determine what qualifies. If
It's 51.
51% or more comes from alcohol, then you are a bar because that's the majority of your sales. But if your sales are 51% food, then you're a restaurant. Because what happens is when we had it, then everyone wanted to become a restaurant. No, we're a restaurant because we serve food. So I'm sorry, that is the background to that.
Okay.
The legal cases that have come out through the Harpootlian law firm, I believe they use 35% as the threshold.
For alcohol sales?
No, for food sales, you have to have at least 35% of your income off of food in those cases where some of the bars shut down.
And I think our standard should be higher because we're talking about businesses that we are investing in. Dick Harpootlian is not
That's a good-
talking about
good point.
investing in.
well, that's the thing, like, this is, when you're looking at it holistically, you want to be able to invest in an area to make it look better. That's the whole point of the program. So I don't want to make it harder. I do think we should be intentional and not be, using it for something that will turn over in 2 years because it's just a bar. But I do feel like, so something like Jake's, that does serve 50% or more, but people also eat there, right? So they would be ineligible. And that's just one example. But I do think that I just want to make sure that there could be conversations about.
I'm thinking even different than that, because let's say you have a high-end tapas, okay, that goes into Five Points, and they're taking over an old building, and they want to go in it. Well, if you go in there and you get a $75 bottle of Cabernet, and you and Aliana split an entree, well, it's a lot more than 50%. spent on alcohol, but it's a restaurant. I think we gotta have some leeway for
That's what I meant, yeah.
staff.
Let's exempt wine.
Well,
I mean, I wouldn't
Howard
be,
rule.
except wine.
We got a teen or
Hard liquor only.
yeah.
I want a rule.
Well, no, and two, and you all may have to go through the list, but I think we did find when we did it previously, I don't know if high-end stores were necessarily interested in government money as well.
I hadn't met anybody that's gonna not
Yeah,
take a
had not.
$15,000 facade grant.
I've already sent this to my guy at
I just
Colite
haven't-
Technologies.
Headlines in the state today.
So we need to look
Yeah,
into
so I
this.
just, I mean,
So agree.
that is the history of it, is that, I don't know what the discussion is, is that this discussion today?
No, I asked to just get an overview of it because I had some folks ask if they could be eligible for it, and based on this, we were not. So I wanted to know the history of how this rule was created, because it's not in the program or federal language that restricts from being able to use it. So, which I'm fine, I just think that there should be some flexibility to allow for, that's my stance, is there's going to always be, you know, businesses worth investing in that may not fit squarely in this rule, but could make a huge difference when it comes to a particular entertainment district or
I'm
neighborhood.
just thinking about like, if you go down there and you look at Mooseheads, it's been empty now for 3 years. It's gonna need a facade grant for somebody to go in there along with the other pieces. And the people who have been traditionally looking at it, Oyster Bar, this and that, they could be tucked in there on sales. I mean, I would argue that today, you know, probably some of those places, if you go back to years ago, in Five Points, the majority of places were restaurants, but then they turned into bars that later on, well, that changed their whole, you know, percentage of sales. What if they're 49? We're gonna take somebody for 2%?
Well,
I'd like to
have a
give
suggestion.
staff
Well, no, I wouldn't.
autonomy.
I wouldn't give staff the autonomy because I think you get them in trouble. I think if a company applies and they have more than 51% sales from beer or alcohol, is it beer or whatever that,
Alcohol sales.
then council needs to approve it. I would not put that in city staff's hands.
It's fine with me.
I'm fine with that. I just want the ability to have that flexibility.
Well, I think the other part of today's discussion that I was hoping outside of the overview and addressing this is that they certainly have interest because we've already, I guess, before knowing that we wanted to do the overview and get some of this clarification, the staff has softly put out the fact that we do have funding this year, so they have started getting interest about it. And so some of the history I wanted Aisha to also give was about over the years, there's been iterations of, we're gonna focus in one corridor. And we wanna focus on, I think at one point we were targeting certain types of establishments to focus on to improve was it barbershops or I can't
We
remember.
haven't done industries, but we have done targeted areas.
Targeted area. We
Yeah.
talked about doing industries
did.
too. And so, and the targeted areas, I think, is where
Yeah.
we're still
Yeah, and I,
in the
yeah.
vein of what we're doing.
Yeah,
So
they did
she
the
needs-
sunrise, remember?
In downtown.
She needs some direction, and we need direction on are we doing citywide? Are we staying in a targeted area and that sort of
that's
thing as
helpful.
well?
Yeah, and I do have a slide on that. And I will share that we did work with Krista's group, and we've identified there are about 12 bars in the 5 Points area. So there is limited funding as well. And since bars have been told no for the past probably 10 years, we anticipate if we say yes, then we'll probably have, you know, an increase of interest from.
I'm not
from
interested in
industries.
bars, I'm interested in restaurants.
Restaurants that serve,
Right.
yeah.
So it's how we define that, and if we use the 51% definition to determine if they're considered.
I think we decided that we accept it, and then if there's one that city council helps make that decision. That,
Would it be better to, instead of using alcohol, or use food like the lawsuits do?
We're not the lawsuits. I mean, I think they're not comparable standards. This is the city government investing in a business that sells alcohol, totally different than, Dick's lawsuits. And and honestly, you wouldn't want to tie because he is showing how the bars are problems. And so you wouldn't want to tie your philosophy with their,
Okay.
do you see what I'm saying? Like,
No,
Would
he
staff
tied
be
it
able to
to-
maybe
well,
develop
first of
some
all, he
language
tied it
saying,
to
like,
certain businesses that
you
are no
know,
longer there, so that's not a.
this
that's
year
not a
we're
discussion
accepting,
anymore.
applications, but it'll be up to city council's.
I tell you what's not on
discretion.
there that needs to be on there, vape shops.
oh, yeah, we can add that.
I agree with that.
So we're clear. You're suggesting that we take out the language, businesses with 51% or more of revenue from alcohol sales?
No, we keep it, but if we have one that
If staff
comes in-
deems there's one that's teeter-tottering that makes sense for us to do, that they bring it to council and council approves it so it doesn't put the burden on staff is what.
Well, how would they
Yeah, but how would we
apply if
communicate to them that they
if
can
that
apply?
is in there?
Well, I mean, I think you're gonna have restaurants or something, I mean, yeah, I guess.
That's the thing, like, I'm like, they won't be able to apply if that's in there, so.
And this discretion, so what would that look like when judgment calls have to be made? You want it to come to the whole council? You want it to come to a committee of council? You wanna?
I definitely don't want it to put the staff in that position.
I don't either, but I'm trying to
That's why
help
I'm more-
facilitate what it looks like if we
Why don't you just
just.
bring it to the Economic Development Committee?
What
We'll
is
Do
take
it?
all-
you want, do you want?
I take all the trouble, issues, why not?
Or the city manager. I don't know if you want.
I got
Or
no
the city
problem, I got no
manager.
problem saying no too.
No, I don't
So-
want that. But I mean, if that's what direction we're going,
And what you can do is, we can add, you can appeal a decision, like if you're denied because of,
But don't we, okay.
I think what
If you're a new
happens is-
business, first of all, you're a new business, you can't disqualify them, number one. If it's a new restaurant, you can't disqualify them because you got no sales history.
Yeah.
no, but they're gonna have 3 years of projections, and it's gonna need
I
to
know what my
show all of their
projections will look
sales
like.
are. I mean, we would,
But I,
we require you.
look, I'm being in a restaurant business for 20 years. I'm gonna tell you, I can't tell you, one year I had a lot of alcohol sales and one year I didn't have a lot of alcohol sales. It all depends. I mean,
But they can't even make that decision without having the information, so they have to have 3 years projections.
But aren't we really trying to make the distinction between
Between
a restaurant and a bar? So I mean, I think if we could come up with the,
yeah.
you know, it's a restaurant, in other words, if you're a bar, then you probably shouldn't go through the appeal process. If you're a restaurant, then I think we want the appeal
51%,
process.
I just think it's hard. When I
I
started thinking
get
about
it.
some high-end stuff coming
know.
in, there was an example of a certain elected official who might be a lawyer, who somebody brought his receipt from his dinner that he had, and his alcohol exceeded his meal, and it was 75-25. And the point is that doesn't always work.
But they weren't submitting the alcohol portion for reimbursement, were they?
They should have.
I'm sorry.
Well, I always just advise that if we establish something, we need to be clear about what we're establishing, because there's no point to put something out there or take something out, and then we get into a pattern with bars and or restaurants applying, and
Did you put something-
then we say no, so they're like, well, what is the city really doing? Why are you even addressing this?
With,
Oh, could you increase the threshold?
Well, just one suggestion, can we not try and figure it out today and go do some research like NACE codes? I'm assuming there are some official definitions of what is a restaurant somewhere, like NACE codes, the codes y'all use, y'all
We can
use.
look that up. I'm
And then-
not sure if they.
Maybe get some information.
you said businesses without revenue from alcohol sales are subject to further review and extra other information or something. I mean, we don't have to make a decision today, but
Right.
thinking something along that lines, That way, you're not saying no, but you're also not saying yes.
Right.
Business license may be able to give you the answer to that, how they are registered with the NAICS code.
So they have a different one, yeah. Yeah, that's good. And
I mean, you could also create another
we
category
don't, they don't distinguish.
where it's like subject to additional review, like it could be like its own.
Can you come back with some recommendations?
Yeah, we can. Another thing I talked to Missy about is we probably want to look at any nuisance complaints, just trying to figure out what any trickle down effect of allowing, you know.
Now, I think that is actually incumbent that you check nuisance complaints. Now, we would expect code violations because it's for exterior outfit. And that was kind of like the original intent, was help deal with the code way back in the day.
It was, yeah.
Code violations, but,
And then we all agree
Criminal
vape shops, add
activity.
those, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
add vape, yeah.
This is just a list of eligible improvements for the interior. So the typical walls, ceilings, floors, things that can't be easily removed and taken to another location. And then the exterior, the awnings, carpentry, lighting, masonry, signs is a big one for our businesses. Improvements on their signage.
Aisha, what do you think the majority has been used on in the past?
Flooring,
Yes.
ceilings, and then signage is a big one. The awnings are really expensive. That's expensive. Painting, and I do have some pictures too.
I think the majority is from the outside, exterior versus interior.
I think so, yeah. But I think what we determined is we did a lot of improvements in the past on the exterior, and then if you go inside, it's not very aesthetically appeasing. So you wanted to do some types of improvements on the inside as well.
And these are two different grants?
Yeah, so
You
yes,
get
there's
just
an
one and-
exterior
okay.
and an interior.
Okay.
Yeah, depending on the need, because everyone may not need some interior improvements.
Now, I don't mean to be technical, but a parking lot is not interior.
Right.
It's in the roll call.
Yeah, okay. You're right.
And are they able to get
Both.
more than one business can, up to a certain amount of funding?
Yeah, so they can have one, but it can be interior and exterior combined. Yes.
And remind me, because I'm drawing a blank. Do you require X amount from the owner as well? Is it equal match? Or
So during COVID, we paused that match. In the past, it was 20%. Currently, there is no match right now, but we have done 20% in the past.
20% of the overall cost, or
Right.
they're doing an equal amount of work,
20% of the cost.
some type of
Yeah.
improvement?
Mhm.
I think you gotta have something in there.
Do you feel like 20% was well received by?
That's a little bit difficult for some of our smaller businesses. But I mean, they met that requirement in the past.
Okay.
I don't know from staff if they've heard any feedback on that 20%.
It hindered many businesses. We had
On the commercial side or on the facade side?
on the,
Because we're talking about two different loans here.
yeah, on the facade side, with the 20% was required on the facade side, on the exterior.
Uh-huh.
The interior was, did not have that requirement. So it limited businesses, and well, I know from the different sectors that we work, many of the businesses in certain corridors were unable to participate because of that 20%. I'm not so sure in 5 points whether that was an issue.
Well, I mean, I think you gotta have a general rule, so the question becomes, if you make these improvements, I mean, signs can be taken, awnings can be taken, lighting can be taken, doors and windows can be taken. So I guess the question is you want to make sure that if we're investing in that business, maybe it's not 20% cash that they come up, maybe it's improvements that equal that amount so that everybody's invested together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and historically, going back to the Cycle program, our funding was an incentive for the businesses to participate. And, I mean, let's face it, many of the improvements that we've done go well over
Yeah.
that threshold.
I also don't want to
I'm sorry.
prohibit businesses, especially when we're talking about some of the gateways
Mhm.
that need that extra push from, you know,
I'll give you a perfect example. We did an awning.
Brett,
for some reason I knew that was coming.
I'm sorry.
I was seeing how long he was gonna go, Erica, before he reached the limit.
The last time we did the program in 5 Points, and I'll just point out a business on Saluda, the Gourmet Shop. They replaced the awning over there. And if you know the Gourmet Shop, that awning spans almost a half of the block. So our 15%, our 15,000 was a portion of what the requirement was there. And the owner, participated and added whatever funding was needed. And that is true of most of the programs that we do.
So, based on history, is there a way for us to just ensure that they're making investment alongside with us without making it a dollar amount requirement? You know,
Well, I think,
and to me, like, so let's say we're on North Main, at the North Main Plaza, for example. The further out near I-20, somebody goes in there and we get them a facade grant. But they're converting to a restaurant, so we're helping them with the grease trap. Then I guess you could say that grant count as, what I want to make sure is that people are investing for the success all the way around, and it's not just, well, I got this, and then all of a sudden, 3 months later.
Right. Yeah. I think later on in the presentation, Aisha will go over some numbers, and the numbers will show their private investment.
I just want to confirm, do we still have the requirement with the facade that they have to stay in that location a certain number of years for it to be forgiven?
Right. It's a 2-year on both sides, on the interior and the exterior. 2 years, because it's forgivable over 2 years.
It used to be forgivable over 5 years. That might have been.
Yeah, now that changed when I came on board. I don't remember the 5.
So there's a.
You only get one rule, Tina. You won't get two.
Right.
So yeah, we can add some language in there about in-kind and other investments for the project.
The grant is so small, they would they would almost have to put in a whole lot more money to their own.
What's your hope? And you count that towards it, but that way, it's the overall investment.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is just a pie chart of the investment since the program started, or some iteration of the program since 1997. It's been called different things, but there's been a $2.2 million investment with different funding sources. I will say largely over the past 10 years, it's mostly been CDBG funding is how we funded the program. And I do have some additional information because this year we do have the addition of the ARPA funds for that.
Aisha, somebody had mentioned not too long ago that there was a lot of funding either through SBA or Treasury for small businesses. Have you heard anything about that?
No, I'm not familiar with what that would be.
For help with growth, for equipment purchases and other items for businesses. It may be worth reaching out to Rick Wade at Chamber and ask him about, because I think it was he that mentioned it to me a couple weeks ago. And I tried to follow up with him, but all I got was a full voicemail.
Okay, yeah, I'll reach out to see what else I can find.
And Aisha too, can I add, I think this is one good thing we used to do, but we would have public investment.
Oh, I have it here.
here.
So on this slide, and this is kind of the one that Brett alluded to, over the years, the different areas that we've been in and the private investment for each year. I will say, currently, we're in the 5 Points area. Now, we did not have funding last year, so we don't have any projects from last year. CDBG does require that we are in a target area because we do have to do an environmental. But as I mentioned, we do have ARPA funds available now that will allow us to extend outside those areas. I probably have about 11 businesses so far that are interested in North Main, Lady Street, Two Notch Road. There's a lot of interest outside of 5 Points. While we still need to have a target area, I think there is an argument for us extending it with the ARPA funds because we have the flexibility to do so.
Well, I think
How
we
much
should-
is the ARPA funds? I'm sorry if I missed
Yes. So I have 350,000 for the next 2 fiscal years. So this year, 350, and then next year,
And
350.
that's in addition to these two loan,
That's it.
that's in addition to this program.
So that would be, yeah, but we would model that program after the one where we utilize the CDBG dollars.
Okay.
I think you try to spread it as best
think-
you can.
Yeah.
I don't,
Well, no, so.
welcome to the Tina world.
I'm like, did you see her face? She's like,
This is my thing, no, but no, so here's the issue that we've had. If you want people to really see the impact, you have to really concentrate all of the improvements in a certain area, if you want people to see it. And so that's how downtown looks so much different, but then when we did North Main, people still don't even know we did it, and that's because we had an 8-mile stretch. So that's the only reason why I say it is good to have a targeted area so that people can see the impact of the investments that we're making. And I'm not here for one or the other. I just wanted to make sure to note that that has been our experience.
And I think along with that, which, the fiscal years have ebbed and flowed of when we could fund the program substantially. So that works well when you know that we're sustaining the program year after year, year over year, because then you can expect to see, okay, we've done this in this quarter and we're moving to the next quarter, or we're continuing to work in this quarter. So there were years where back to back, there was certainly impact and, a lot of press about Main Street when the program was used that way. But, that would have to be something during budget time that we're really focusing in on, that we're gonna continue to invest in the program consistently.
And I do have a couple of pictures of the different areas we've been. So we have been in the North Main corridor in the past. And you can see there is a, significant difference in the before and after. We've also been Hardin Street, North Millwood, Taylor Street, Gervais. Then 5 Points is where we were most recently. And I think Ms. Herbert, I think you were trying to figure out Gourmet Shop. That's this one right here is the Gourmet Shop awning that Brett was talking about, how long it is. So those awnings can be pretty expensive. And during COVID, there were a lot of supply chain issues. So we experienced that a lot with this project. But we were able to expend those CDBG dollars before the deadline, which is always good. And then I just wanted to, we kind of already talked about this, the different funding sources, because sometimes that matters with how we implement the program, where the funds are coming from. So currently we have $250,000 from CDBG. They must meet a national objective, and that one is to eliminate slum and blight. And then there are federal regulations that apply, such as the environmental. We have to do Davis-Bacon interviews with the employees that are on site. Then with American Rescue, we are not limited to a targeted area, but the small businesses have to demonstrate that they've been negatively impacted by the pandemic, are located in a qualified census tract. So those are items that we'll put on the application to make sure we're meeting the requirements of the ARPA funding. And then I just have a note about the
Well,
increased
that kind of
interest.
gives you the guidelines of
Right.
where you can actually go with it.
Yes, so we'll include that as a part of the application, their address, and make sure they're within the qualified census tract or a reduction. But like I said, we have at least 11 that are interested, and we really haven't done a full push to say, the funding is available. So I think there's a lot of interest throughout our entire city for this program.
Meeting the eligibility of being in a qualified census tract is probably not gonna be that difficult.
No,
And, so
It's not.
again, if you're,
Well, it's interesting where those pockets lie. It's not sometimes where you think.
that's what I'm saying. So if we, to the discussion of if you're gonna target it or not, I think checking that box is not that difficult. We might be surprised where it's a qualified census tract after all, so.
yeah, I've looked at some of the ones from the 11 that we've received interest in, and they are located in the census tract.
Hey, so do we send you businesses that we think might be
Yes,
interested to reach out
yes,
to?
yeah. I have already received some, so, and then our staff will also go out into the community. Brett and Carla have gone door to door in 5 Points to determine interest in that area. So we'll extend it to other areas in the city if that's the decision that we make to do a citywide program.
Are we part of any of that's going on at the other side of the trestle where those folks are redoing the facades?
Not yet, but there's been some interest because that's not a targeted area. But if we go citywide, we have met with some of the individuals over there, and they are
Because
interested.
what they've done is fabulous.
It
It
is.
looks good.
Yeah.
What
God,
is currently the targeted area?
5 Points is where
5
we
Points,
are with the
okay, okay.
CDBG dollars, yes.
It was last year as well, right?
Yeah, year
So-
before last. We didn't
so
have any funding last year.
So it might be time to switch areas.
So, forgive me.
Mm-hmm.
Total funding for the next 2 years for this program?
$950,000 if we combine our ARPA funding with the CDBG funding.
And when do we decide the path forward on, we cut it up into equal amount for 4 districts?
Yeah. Well, CDBG, since that application has already been approved, that is the target area is 5 Points for the CDBG dollars. And those have to be expended by, I'm pretty sure, April or May. So that's
150,000.
the two.
The 250.
250,000. So yeah, so that's our priority right now is getting those funds spent. But I think we have till 2025 to, I'm looking at Missy Kaufman, 2025 or 2026 to expend those funds. 2025, okay. If that's the goal, we'll do
So I
2025.
feel like that's it. Like you have the targeted area for CDBG and then perhaps open up with this unique one-time funding to I agree with you, like it shows more impact, but then I worry that some of the businesses that need it the most, like in Farrow Road and some of these areas that aren't necessarily entertainment districts yet, but could be, they would miss out.
She targeted it, that area.
So is the recommendation 4 parts, split the ARPA money into 4 parts, or?
I was just saying, open it up citywide and see what you get. And then if you need to allocate based on district, if you have so many applications, maybe, that would be up to you all, but that's my recommendation.
Yeah, and we can go into the different districts and kind of do a push where we go out and share information with the businesses to make sure they're aware.
And we have had times where we have gone to businesses because they look so bad.
Yeah,
Like, because those are the ones, they may not realize they need it.
Well, and to your point, I think there's a market starting up in Edgewood that I think could really use some of these facade grant fundings. Because they are gonna offer some fresh foods and everything.
okay.
Is it in Edgewood or in that pocket that's the county?
Across from Deacon Felder's, Red's Barber Shop. Right there next to the new apartment, Second Nazareth. No, but I'd like to see it prosper.
Thank you for speaking up. I will say too, because it's one-time money, I think that is an opportunity to do citywide. Something that we wouldn't normally do. I'm trying to look at it from all different angles.
Has the dollar store applied for this? Because I know Brian, he was interested in
He
getting it.
hasn't been able to apply because that wasn't in the targeted area, but he would be eligible if we open it up.
Okay,
citywide.
yeah, that would be,
But
I know, he's working really hard.
He's
I
a
would love.
tenant of that property,
And
right?
that's fine, we would just have to get approval from the property owner, which I was gonna say, I think are his parents,
But the other suites in that development could also.
could apply, yeah. Now, what we have talked about is if we have a owner that owns multiple, like in that one, if he owns 3, we have another one where there's a shopping center, limiting it to maybe 2, just because if someone has, you know, a shopping center with 10 storefronts, that could easily take all the money. So we might do something where we say 2, depending on funding availability. So if we still have funds available, you know, in a year, then maybe they could come back.
Citywide?
So
Not
I think the
necessarily.
consensus citywide is
Yeah, I like
focused on the ARPA money and that the block grant obviously has restrictions and guidelines and census tracts tied to it as well, I'm assuming, right?
It does, and so what
250 is already allocated
Yeah, it-
towards 5 points.
it has been, when we
Through
apply,
through your action plan.
right.
For this year, but
Yeah, it is almost time to apply for funding again, so if there's, we can definitely do some research to see if there's another targeted area for future CDBG.
I think there's plenty of areas we can target, but I would push, my opinion would be, or I would like us to consider moving the ARPA money to open it up to more
That's what I,
options. There's just some really, I think there can be, it may not all happen in one area, but I do think where it does happen will create a big impact.
I think so too.
Sometimes just planting the seed is.
Right, it does have a trickle down effect, like it does, you see the business next door starts making improvements and, so it does impact the entire area.
This was really helpful. We needed to get that feedback. Thank you, Aisha.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alicia.
And then you'll come back or send a recommendation on some definitions of language.
It's just the wrong part.
Interior properties that won't come on that list.
Parking lots are expensive.
I didn't do the best job on timing. You all are just really working quickly today. So we were planning for you all to have a little bit of a break and some lunch. Now at, 11, yeah. So we can go ahead and do that if you like, about 15 minutes
We
till.
having a working lunch?
We can start up with we can get the consultant. There's a consultant that has to be present for executive session.
Okay,
So we'll need them to be able to set up half here, half virtual.
okay,
So I just need time to get them in place.
all right. Fine with
But
me.
yeah,
Ready?
I don't know if
Do you want,
lunch
do you
is.
want
so do you want us to
wait?
go? Are we going into exec? No.
Yeah, your lunch will be here at 11. So if you, I didn't know if y'all need to just do what you need to do
We're
for
gonna go ahead and go into executive session now, and that will cover us through. We can have lunch in executive session and do the discussion.
Right, but I need time to get them set up. They're not due to be here just quite yet, so
So what she's saying is we have about a
about
15-minute
15-minute break.
Go into executive session, we can do whatever we want to.
What's the is it recess?
Do you want,
We're proposing that you all go ahead and make a motion to go into executive.
Would you like us to do that now, Madam Clerk, or would you like us to do that at 11?
Do it now, that way we can go ahead and shut down the audio.
Okay.
Be ready to roll into executive.
Mr. Ball, you have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move we go into executive session for discussion of negotiations incident to propose contractual arrangements pursuant to SC Code 30-4-78-2, Crawford Consulting.
thank you.
Motion is a second.
Second.
Any questions, concerns? Hearing none, seeing none, Madam Clerk, can you read the roll, please?
Mr. Brown? Ms. Herbert?
Yes.
Dr. Boswell?
Yes.
Mr. Brennan?
Yes.
Mr. McDowell?
Aye.
Mr. Duval?
You are not Reverend McGowan.
I was not expecting.